This week, I scored 11 claims about why America is at war with Iran in part 3 of my coverage of this war. And here's what threw me. The administration's own intelligence director filed written testimony saying the justification of the war doesn't hold up. You probably already heard that. She wrote it on page 6. She filed it with the Senate Intelligence Committee, and then she didn't read it on camera. Her explanation? She ran out of time. Now, let's think about that for a moment. That was one omission, one page, one hearing, one document. You can check it out online. But it's a loophole that no institution in the American government has been able to close. And we'll explain that here on this podcast. Right now, the only thing that might close it is staring you in the face every time you fill up your car. This is the exhausted moderate. Let me show you what I found. So on February 28, 2026, the United States launched Operation Epic Fury. It's something we all know. Hours after the first strikes, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. This was known. This should have been expected. The IRGC warned that any ship attempting passage would be set on fire. And what happened? Naturally, gas prices spiked 56 cents in a single week, the fastest increase in years, up 60 cents total in 2 weeks. The national average, $3.93 a gallon, approaching $4. It may even be higher by the time you listen to this. The president claimed it doesn't really affect the United States. But energy experts note oil is a global market. A disruption anywhere spikes prices everywhere. So the global oil market dictated otherwise in this case. Here's why I picked this story. I spent my junior officer tour, a shore tour, in the skiff of Commander Task Force 74 in Japan, dealing with lots of intelligence. So I understand how the intelligence system is supposed to work. The intelligence community collects and assesses information, but the president decides. However, Congress oversees. The War Powers Resolution provides a backstop that's designed to stop situations where the intelligence completely contradicts what the executive is doing. At least that's the design. I still want to believe in that design, but here we are 3 weeks into this war, and every one of those checkpoints was tested, and every one of them failed. The system of checks and balances designed to prevent unilateral conflict completely bypassed the American public. But while the constitutional architecture failed, the economic reality did not. The price of a gallon of gas is doing what Washington cannot, holding a war to account. Here's what I can verify, what I can't verify, and what common sense tells me about the mess in between. The stated justification for this current conflict was specific. In a March 4th meeting with congressional leaders, the president stated Iran was, and I quote, 2 weeks from possessing a nuclear weapon. That's a verified fact. You can look it up on many outlets. 2 weeks, time-bound, measurable. The kind of claim you can actually test against the evidence, so I tested it. The White House branded the operation peace through strength, but within 24 hours, political allies and right-leaning coverage migrated from defending the specific 2 weeks timeline to defending a broader concept of deterrence. Think about that. When your own media ecosystem stops repeating the president's stated justification, that has to tell you something. The claim was initially specific and time-bound. It established a definitive threshold to measure against the actual intelligence. 4 independent lines of evidence converge on the same conclusion. The DNI's written testimony, Iran's enrichment program was obliterated in June 2025. No effort since then to try to rebuild. The IAEA, Director General Rafael Grossi confirmed no evidence of Iran building a nuclear bomb. The NCTC, Director Joe Kent, resigned on March 17th. His letter explicitly stated that Iran posed no imminent threat. Kent is a Trump appointee, a combat veteran with a Purple Heart. Nuclear experts assessed Iran was nowhere close because the weapons-grade processing requires destroyed centrifuge cascades. No intelligence official has publicly corroborated the 2-week claim. not the DNI, not the CIA director, not the NCTC director, not the IAEA, not any allied service. Now here's the part that keeps me up at night. The March 18th Senate Intelligence Committee hearing is the evidentiary centerpiece of this case. Gabbard submitted written testimony. Page 6 contained the intelligence community's assessment. Enrichment obliterated. No efforts to rebuild, but she did not read that section aloud. She, quote, recognized that the time was running long, unquote. Think about that. But Senator Warren read the omitted paragraph on camera and said, "You chose to omit the part that contradicted Trump." Gabbard did not dispute the content. There's a directive called ICD 12. It establishes a presumption of a written notification on the part of the DNI to Congress. By filing the assessment in writing, Gabbard technically satisfied her statutory obligation. She wrote what the intelligence community knows, but she didn't say it. The law treats that as compliance, and that is the loophole. One document, one omission, two masters served. But here's the deal. The loophole creates a black hole. Once the truth is filed but not spoken, the president is free to declare imminent threat. Gabbard testified, and this is a direct quote, "The only person who can determine what is and what is not imminent threat is the president." Under the legal theory of kinetic preemption, the Intelligence Committee's factual assessment becomes legally irrelevant the moment the president declares imminence. I'm going to say that again. Under the theory of kinetic preemption, dreamt up by the administration's own lawyers, the intelligence community's factual assessment becomes legally irrelevant the moment the president declares imminence. The IAEA says no evidence. Kent says no imminent threat. The DNI program wrote obliterated. All of it hit the brick wall of presidential imminence determination. Now, here's the deal. Whether the Constitution grants that authority is unresolved. That's the black hole. No court has ever tested the claim, and in the current environment, we have to ask ourselves, is any court likely to? Congress voted to stop the war and came up short. The House, 212 to 219, 7 votes short. The Senate, 47 to 53. The Kane-Paul resolution fails. A second attempt on March 19th also failed. These votes were bipartisan in both directions. Fetterman, a Democrat, crossed over to support the war. Paul and Massey, Republicans, crossed over to support the constraint, arguing the war betrayed the 2024 campaign promises. So the legislative backstop failed by 13 human beings. 13 people stood between a constitutionally constrained war and an unconstrained one. Every mechanism in the system was tested. Every mechanism failed or was bypassed. The intelligence assessment, the written assessment contradicted the war rationale, but was bypassed via oral omission. So status failed. Congressional notification. ICD 112 was technically satisfied via written filing, while the public was kept blind. Status failed. The war powers vote. The legislative veto failed to constrain the president by a narrow bipartisan motion. Status failed. The system didn't break down. It was bypassed by design. Every checkpoint existed on paper, but none connected the intelligence to the authority. But here's where most coverage stopped short. They reported the intelligence gap and the congressional votes, but they barely touched the part that matters to most Americans every single day. WTI crude at $96. Brent peaked at $126. Goldman Sachs estimates that an $18 per barrel geopolitical risk premium is baked into these prices. That's the hidden tax, and you are paying it right now at the pump. We all feel it. JP Morgan and Energy Intelligence project that if the Hormuz blockade persists, WTI could reach $152 to $200 per barrel. Let me say that again. $152 to $200 per barrel. A war justified by omitted intelligence is driving the global energy markets towards what can only be described as historic chaos, and I don't say that lightly. But here's the thing. 5 independent polls since the war all point in the same direction. General opposition. 47 to 53% oppose the war. Morning Consult says 48% blame the administration directly. The base anxiety, 55% of the president's own voters worry about gas prices, and this is from the Quincy Institute and the American Conservative, center-left, and right-leaning outlets. The exit demand, 79% of Trump voters would support declaring victory and ending the war quickly. That's an amazing number, 79%. Among Trump voters 18 to 29, support narrows to just 8 points. 63% of war opponents cite gas fears as the primary reason the gas pump has become the scoreboard of this war. But we've seen this before. During Iraq, Bush's approval fell from 72% to 31% as gas rose above $3. This is a negative 0.52 correlation. In data science terms, that's pretty strong. Republicans lost both chambers in 2006. So there's lots of structural similarities. Secret intelligence, overriding public assessments, a specific timeline claim, 2 weeks now, WMDs then, and an intelligence community that was bypassed. And exactly like 2006, rising consumer prices are the ultimate vulnerability. The pattern doesn't guarantee an outcome, but it does tell us where to start watching. Here's my kind of predictive model. And I want to be transparent that this is where the evidence ends and my analysis begins. In the current zone, WTI at 96, 55% base anxiety. The war is unpopular, but the political foundation still holds. The breaking point. If WTI crosses 110 and a poll shows Republican support below 60%, partisan resolve crumbles. That's based on 5 independent polls, historical precedent, and the Iraq correlation. The higher the price at the pump, the faster the war ends. That's not ideology, that's political gravity. The 60-day war powers deadline arrives April 29th. That's an important date, and there's 3 paths out of that. So let's talk about them. 1, Congress authorizes the war. Based on current votes, this looks unlikely. 2, the president withdraws. Based on the administration posture and his history, that's unlikely too. 3, the deadline is ignored entirely. And here's the deal. If it is, the constitutional architecture of checks and balances is officially dead. No enforcement mechanism will connect what the intelligence community knows to what the government does. Let that sink in. The Gang of 8 subpoena is pending. Oil prices are the leading indicator. I'll update this case file when April 29th arrives. $3.93 a gallon, that number is bigger than ICD-12, bigger than the War Powers Resolution, bigger than a congressional vote that failed by 13. When all of this fails, when the War Powers Resolution fails, when the intelligence community was silenced by a loophole, and when Congress fell 7 votes short, the system ran out of answers, but as the price at the pump rises, every American notices. There's no congressional vote required. No intelligence loophole can hide it. The gas pump is the only check and balance we have left. The loophole is how we got there. The black hole is why we can't get out. And the gas pump is just how we might. These are the facts as I see them and the common sense conclusions that I've drawn, but I leave it up to you to decide. So for the full scoreboard and all the primary source links, head to the case file on Substack. I show my work always. Subscribe at factsandsensesubstack.com. No ads, just analysis, just facts, just sense, so you can make up your own mind. I'm Brian Hopkins, the Exhausted Moderate. Thanks for listening, and until next time.